Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we've got a couple cards we need to be having a little bit of a look at. One of which is going to look quite familiar, and one of which is going to look extremely familiar. Check out how adorable the art is on this new card. It's so cool. I love him. I want to give it a big hug. It's called Snorlax Doll, and it's going to seem kind of familiar, also kind of wordy. Look how much text is on there. Now imagine you get woken up by a 3 and a 5-year-old at 7 in the morning, and then you have to try and start translating these. Yeah. I did translate them though, although I checked with the lovely Antoine Boulet. If this card is in your hand when you are setting up to play, you may put it face down in play as if it were a 120 HP colourless basic Pokémon. This is the only time you can play it. Think like the old Talonflame. Really good card, however, can only be played essentially at the start of the game. And yeah, that's a little bit of a pain. Now, I'm having a little bit of a look here. I believe you can play multiple of these. And that's really important. Because something like Talonflame had to be played as your active Pokemon, and therefore you couldn't actually do anything with it if you had more than one in your hand. If you had one, it went down as your active. If you had multiple, you could only put one as your active. Now, I'm double-checking with the lovely Antoine Boulet, and I will do before I upload this, and I'm double-checking the text myself, but it seems to just say, if you're setting up for play, you can play this from your hand as 120 HP colourless basic Pokemon. Talonflame specifically said Bataru, which is how they say active on Japanese cards. This, I can't see it there, I think, and bearing in mind, you've got to have multiple in your opening hand in order to use this, fine. But if your opponent mulligans and gives you a bunch of extra cards, that is going to make it more likely to happen. I'll double check before I upload this, but I think you can play multiple, but you've got to have them in your hand. This is when you're setting up, this is not turn one, but still, that's kind of awesome. At any time, you can discard this card from play, and it can't retreat, which is very important. It's out there, sorry about that. Cannot be affected by special conditions, but does not give up a prize, which is kind of awesome, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of awesome. And I told you this card is going to seem kind of familiar, and it should. It's Robosub. I love Robosub. There was a brief period of time when Lysander's trump card was released, and people didn't realise quite how broken it was with Seismitoad, and I was able to play this with Donphan. The Donphan from Plasma Storm. It was a hit and run Pokemon. And it was kind of amazing because you could basically use Lysander's trump card to reset your deck like every other turn. And it meant you had Robosub infinitely. You had infinite Robosub during your turn. Or during the game, sorry. You literally always had a Robosub, so your opponent would only ever get a prize if they could gust around your Donphan, because you literally always had Robosub active for the entire game. It was amazing. It was one of my favorite decks I've ever played. It made me very happy. That one was 30 HP, but you could play it whenever you wanted. Here, you get 120, that's 4 times as much, yay, but it's only playable when you're setting up. And this is very important. It makes it both better, and it makes it worse. Some of you are going to be more familiar, probably a lot of you to be fair, are going to be more familiar with Lily's Pokédoll, which was basically the same card. Tiny difference, not worth worrying about now. And that's not really true. You could discard all cards from it and put it at the bottom of your deck rather than discarding it. So it basically meant you could reuse it over and over again. So although you couldn't retreat, you could put it back at the bottom of your deck, which was actually really good. Whereas Robosub, you would have to actually discard it, which was much less good. And you could go all the way back to Clefairy Doll, back in literally the base set. So this kind of mechanic's been around for a while. 120 HP, great. The fact that you have to play it to start the game, boo. But you know what's also kind of amazing? We have TMs now. There's nothing on this card that says it can't attack. Now, it has no attacks, But there's nothing on the card, and I've checked the wording, and I've checked with the lovely Anton Boulay. There is nothing on the card to say it can't attack. And remember how TMs are coming around in this set? Yeah, they are. Turbo Energize. Just to be clear, it's Turbo Energize. That's what we're talking about here. This is the card we want to use with this. Because Turbo Energize is a TM that you attach to your Pokemon, and it falls off at the end of your turn, so it's only a one-shot deal. But you search your deck for 2 basic energy and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. So now, I can start off with Snorlax, potentially multiple. It's got 120 HP, so my opponent actually has to go to effort to KO it, unlike someone like Robosub. And I can be using Turbo Energize to accelerate energy to my bench Pokemon as I'm going. This is awesome! I legitimately love this. I think this is legitimately great. Yeah, you're not always going to start with it in your opening hand, and that's going to be sad. But 120 HP is legitimately your opponent's got to use a decent attack to KO it or do it over a few turns. And the fact that it can use TMs is brilliant. Genuinely brilliant. Oh, and as a side note here, and this is pretty important, this card can exist on the bench. Now, you can't retreat it yourself, but you can switch, or use Switch Cart, because this is a basic Pokemon when it's in play, or like a million other different cards. You can get this in and out the active. You can't retreat it, but you absolutely can get it in and out the active. This card's phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen. Genuinely phenomenal. And to be fair, it's not just Turbo Energize. The TM Blindside, free energy, 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. That's not bad. They've got to have damage counters on to begin with, but still. And let's not forget, we've got the one that can evolve your Pokemon. TM Evolution, that lets you just choose 2 of your bench Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from it, and put that Pokemon on to evolve it. So essentially, you got this 120 HP Pokemon that doesn't give up a prize and can sit in the active, evolving the Pokemon you actually want to use. Oh, I love this. I'm getting 5 Wossies. This is legit. This is legitimately awesome, and I think it's brilliant. Oh, you know what else is legitimately awesome and I think is brilliant? Countercatcher. It's back. And it's kind of weird, because on the one hand, the fact that Countercatcher is back is brilliant and awesome, and we love it. And on the other hand, I'm not sure exactly how much we need to talk about it, because it's not been gone that long, and a lot of people realise quite how good Countercatcher is. But there are a few things in this format we're in at the moment that make it particularly good. Now, what Countercatcher is it's instant gusting on an item card. You can gust straight away on an item card, no downside, just so long as you are behind on prizes. If you've got more prizes remaining than your opponent, you can just switch one of their bench when they're active using an item card. And we've got plenty of setup decks at the moment with small Pokemon who get KO'd quite quickly. Like, we all know that Lost Zone is a deck that can be, a bunch of different Lost Zone decks. They can be quite aggressive, they can go off quite quickly. They've also got a bunch of 70 HP Comfey and can easily go down a prize in the early game. We've got Stage 2 decks around like Gardevoir and Charizard that often will give up the first prize. And these decks are going to love Countercatcher, because these are decks that are built to withstand going down a prize or two, because then they're going to build up these big Pokemon that are hard to KO and bring the prize race back to even and then win, and it's all going to be lovely. But it's not just these kind of decks that make me look at Countercatcher now and go, oh, that's great. It's the kind of cards we're playing. Like, Arven legitimately sees play nowadays. Fun fact, I have an Arven signed by Ghidorah the artist, which makes me extremely happy. It's one of my favourite cards now in my collection. But Arven is a great... Oh, then there's one. It's the Obsidian Flames, a weird reprint of Arven with slightly different line spacing, which makes no real sense. But anyway, Arven lets you search for an item card and a Pokemon tool card. And it sees play in a bunch of decks. This is an item card. So now all of a sudden Arven can go and get this. We see Irida seeing a bunch of play in water decks at the moment. Well, Irida goes and gets an item card and a water Pokemon, so now you're going to be able to go and get this and a water Pokemon at the same time rather than just using Gusting. And now you can get a water Pokemon as well as Gusting, but you can also just go, well, I didn't draw into my boss's orders. Oh, hang on a second, I did draw into Irida, and actually that's just as good right now. This is a phenomenal card. And sure, aggressive decks that want to go ahead and stay ahead for the whole game aren't going to use it. That's fine. There are plenty of decks out there, I promise you, that are going to feel very, 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 very good about this. I can't wait, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely can't wait. This is going to be a card. Another obvious 5 Wossy card. No ifs, buts, or maybes. Obvious 5 Wossy card. And it's not for every deck, and that's okay. Not every deck is going to play this or is going to want to play this. But there are going to be plenty of decks out there that do. And with how many things we're playing that can search for item cards nowadays, I love this. Even all those decks that are playing Forest Seal Stone right now. Yes, I know you can use Forest Seal Stone to go and search for a boss's orders rather than a counter catcher. But wouldn't it be great if you could use Forest Seal Stone to get this and then still have your supporter for the turn? And actually, huge side note about this card, and this is something we saw when it was seeing play before. Please bear in mind, you can use a supporter to dig for this. You can use Professor's Research to go and draw yourself a new hand of 7 cards and draw into this to get the gusting when you need it. You can't play Professor's Research digging for a boss's orders. I mean, you can, I suppose, but then you can't use it till next turn. But you absolutely can here, and it's just wonderful. This is a great card. You can dig for it with other supporters. You can search for it with anything that searches out an item card. There's just so much going on here that's going to be really, really useful in the long run. I think this is brilliant. Right, I've gushed enough about these 2 cards. Now it's over to you guys. Tell me which of these cards you think are going to see a whole bunch of play. Tell me which ones you're going to be putting in your decks. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy. That's where we talk about Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And of course, get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Uncle Pokepeter, who's been a supporter of ours for a little while now and does seem to be a very lovely person, so shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.